Hello everybody, it's Shaderock. It's been a while since I've done a pre-recorded video, but I've been talking about doing this for, well, I think since Dark Souls. And that is with the start of Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. One of the things I'll be doing with it is talking about the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess manga. I will be breaking up all 11 volumes. Each one is going to be divided by its dungeon, as that is how the manga is split up, with the exception of a few chapters. First one being chapter 1, which is mostly the prologue. I will not be doing a full breakdown of all the dialogue. I will not be showing all the panels for various reasons. One of which being I would encourage people to go read this themselves. It is a very good story. It's very well written, and it gives characters who honestly you wouldn't expect to have arcs. I've been hyping that up a little bit in the playthrough. There will be spoilers ahead for every single chapter of the manga, but there will also be spoilers ahead for the game, since there are some elements that are shown off earlier in the manga than there are in the game. Some things I will mention, but I will not show, just because I'm going to kind of do half spoilers, I guess the best way to describe it. I will show some of the more notable pieces of art and the more notable scenes, and I will be talking about the overall plot elements. As we go, I will also compare how the events are handled in the game as compared to the manga, which one I like more. There are some that I think do better, there are some that I think are as good, but we'll get to that as we get to it. So, if you have somehow not played or seen anything about Twilight Princess yet, I mean, the game came out in 2006, and would not like anything spoiled, I would suggest waiting until I'm done the playthrough, and then watching this as a complete series of all 11 volumes. If you've already beaten Twilight Princess and would like to see a new version of the story, I'm going to give you a basic overview, but I do recommend reading the manga, again, as there are a lot of jokes and little dialogue I will be skipping over. But with that, let's get started with talking about Volume 1 of Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. So, before we start talking about Volume 1, a little bit of a disclaimer really quick. A lot of the panels, the image quality will not be the best. The reason for this is very hard for me to find some of the panels of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Most of the panels I'll be showing are going to be taken from photos of the actual manga, as I do own the complete collection. I will be doing cropping and stuff to try to avoid showing full panels, as again, I do encourage you to go read the actual manga. But with that, talking about Volume 1 of Twilight Princess, immediately there is a very huge difference between the original story and the game. And that is, the manga starts within the first few pages. This is the first chapter of the entire story, talking about Zant, and shows how he took over the kingdom without going into too much detail. It talks about the fact that they actually elected who would be the ruler of the realm of Twilight, and that it wasn't Zant, that he's a usurper. It also shows the creation of the Shadow Beasts, and it shows how the realm of Twilight fell into ruin. Also, briefly, it is mentioned that Zant is searching for the Shadow Crystals, not the fused shadows. This is one and the same. I don't know why the fused shadows were changed to Shadow Crystals, but it is something that does happen. It just is a choice? I don't know. It's mostly a nomenclature thing. Everything else, though, is pretty much... Well, there's nothing really else to talk about this outside the fact that it does show Zant's takeover very early. We see this in the game, but this isn't until, I'd like to say, after Dungeon 3. So it is an interesting choice to put it here, but at the very least they use it to give more context. Also, the Golden Wolf makes an appearance. As, well, the Golden Wolf has a lot more story relevance in the manga than it does in the actual game, as the game is mostly used as a gameplay mechanic to teach you new sword techniques. And this actually brings up one of the things I like about all the Legend of Zelda manga, and that is side characters who you wouldn't think it get more story arcs. The Golden Wolf is not a prevalent character; it doesn't appear all the time, but when it does appear, the scene has weight. We also, and this is why I'm not showing a lot of panels from this segment, we get to see the true form of Midna very early. This is not revealed until the end of Twilight Princess in the original game. But they play a lot more with the imp versus real Midna in the manga, and I'll go over that as we do. But that is mostly a thing for later volumes, as Midna is not really present inside of the first volume. She only really exists in this first chapter, showing the takeover of Zant. And if I'm going to be honest, there's some really good body horror used for showing the denizens of the realm of Twilight turning into shadow beasts, and it is used in general to very good effect. That brings us to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 takes place in Ordon Village, the same place that we start our adventure as Link. But there's some stark differences. For one thing, instead of starting with Link and Russell sitting at the lake in the game, it instead starts with them coming back from the woods with firewood, much like we saw Epona carrying in the actual game. As Link arrives back in town, though, he turns around and nearly passes out from something in staring to the darkness of the forest. Link, in this entire story, especially in these first few chapters, he seems like a very happy person. He loves being in the village. He loves just this simple lifestyle of it, but he is hiding something. And it also does a very good job establishing early on that the animals are sensing the turn from the approaching realm of Twilight. The goats that are normally docile are spooked, and there's other differences that will become apparent as we go. But one of the major changes is, after Link's done with the goats, the day doesn't end like it does in the game. Instead, he actually plays around with the kids, in particular doing sumo wrestling. And afterwards, the mayor asks him to take the sword to Hyrule Castle, much like Link is asked in the game. In the game, we never hear Link speak, but it's implied he just agrees to it. In the manga, he has a very different reaction, though. In the manga, he says there's work on the to do on the ranch. Can you ask someone else? Passing off the job. Almost as if he is afraid to go to Castletown, which is what one of the other massive changes to the manga. Link. Link has a full backstory that is not in the game. And most of this first chapter is used to establish Link having a nice, easygoing lifestyle in the village. There's nothing really crazy going on. It talks about his relationship with all the townspeople, and how when he came to town, he actually was not from that village. He wasn't born and raised. The first person he met in the village was Ilya, and that's really it. It's mostly just used to show a happy set of go-lucky days, but it also shows that it couldn't last forever, as the second chapter ends with a shadow beast falling into Faron Woods. And, well, that's where we start to get an idea of some of the stuff Link is hiding. So, we start the next chapter with Link having a nightmare about hands of darkness reaching out with us as readers and those who have seen the game know as shards of, I guess lack of better term, shards of Twilight, reaching out to grab him, where he suddenly wakes up and says that this has been a reoccurring nightmare. We see him also in the nightmare wearing an outfit more similar to what Link would wear in the older Legend of Zelda games, which is always nice to see that outfit. From there, though, we would actually have Colin going through his stuff, just because Colin was checking in on Link. And asking about the books on Link's shelf, which are books about sorcery that Link says he cannot read, but he's collecting all of these various books all related to magic and sorcery. And he just says he bought them because the titles are interesting. He does not explain why. From there, we get more of the daily life. Like, we get to learn a little bit more about the culture of Orden Village. The fact that all their clothes are weaved from the goat fur. We have some shenanigans with the little kids, such as Tallow claiming that he's going to be Link's apprentice and that he's given up on being a warrior and wants to be a ranch hand like Link. Much to his father's chagrin of, no, you're going to work the farm and raise the pumpkins that our village is known for, that I'm very proud of. Again, there's not really much to talk about here. It's mostly just like everyday stuff, and it's a lot more laid back and peaceful compared to the game, where in the game they were talking about Link preparing to leave for the village. Leave it for Castletown. But what is very interesting is the final conversation Link has, where that went a little bigger than I thought. Where Tallow talks about wanting to go in the forest because there's mysteries and treasure and stuff to collect, and Link tells him, no, you must never go into the darkness. Seeming almost angry and afraid at the idea of Tallow going into the forest. Which is something else about this Link. As I've mentioned, he's hiding something. And it's something very unique to this Link. With that, the next chapter does pick up immediately after Link snapping at Tallow about never going into the darkness. And Tallow and the others Tallow actually gets very upset because it's one of the few times they've ever seen Link get angry. He's normally very laid back and happy. And they're shaken, and actually Tallow starts to cry a little bit over it because Link's never really yelled at them. The next few scenes are mostly just him going on a horse ride with Ilya, and she mentions about him going to Castletown and if Russell was gone and how she's happy it's a peaceful town. But Link mentions, and we can see this is weighing heavily on him, safe, but what if something happened? Who would protect the town? Like, we're seeing that there's definitely something weighing on this Link. And to the point, when he joins Russell and his family for dinner that night, Russell offers to make Link his partner, his apprentice. Meaning, Link's skills as a swordsman are not known to anyone in the village. He's keeping this secret. There's almost as if he's hiding. And afterwards he runs home and he goes home and he collapses, just saying he doesn't want this peaceful time to end. Bringing back to the nightmare we saw earlier, where there's something chasing him and haunting him. Where he steals his resolve, he stands up, he goes to the desk, and he starts reading the books. All to learn how to turn darkness into light. From there, we actually shift away from Link, and we can see, I've mentioned before, that the manga does a very good job over the game showing the effects that the approaching Veil of Twilight has on the forest. The pumpkins that Talo's father is so proud of are starting to rot and come out misshapen. This leads to him actually taking this batch and dumping them into the ravine between Farron Woods and Orden Village. The same one that the rope bridge is over. But as the pumpkins fall, you see the horde of shadow beast monsters and the king in the background, talking about dirty, ominous things and how they are all thrown away like trash. Now, I will say, going into this final chapter, there's a lot to talk about. This one I'll say this last chapter is probably the one where I have the most amount of panels taken from. So let's get right into it. The chapter opens up with Link having another nightmare, but this one's very different from the one earlier. The nightmare he had earlier in the story, we saw hands chasing after him. This time he sees a woman whose features you can't make out, and a golden wolf staring right at him. Afterwards, he wakes up to the sound of the kids calling out again, with Talo saying he's not going to stop bothering Link until he makes him his apprentice. But the dream has shaken him and everything else going on. Link is visibly angry. This leads to Talo trying to get onto Epona, much to her displeasure. As Link is going around town, he finds the cat, and he goes to the general store. And, well, the scene takes quite a shift from there. From there, it cuts to the woods, where we just see a normal woodcutter with strange smoke, and we see a shadow beast grab him. And we see something that was only implied in the game. As we see in Kakariko Village, in the main game, the bomb shop owner talks about the fact that the general store lady was attacked by shadow beasts. By a shadow beast. By the time the town got together to go help her, there were two. We see the shadow beast turns the woodcutter into a shadow beast. Which kind of makes it hard to talk about, like, Link going back into town, talk about a magic book he ordered. We get a very, like, stark tone shift. Link talk about, a book he ordered which hadn't come in yet, and the general store owner actually giving him a bottle, like, basically just like an energy drink that was made with spring water, which is very good for your health. And the fact that this is a little bit where we get some information on the spirits. Not really anything in too much detail, we'll get that later, just like we do in the games. But it's the fact that they bring light catches Link's interest. But they can't stay for long, as Ilya comes running in looking for Link, because Talo and Mallow have gone on Epona, and she is freaking the fuck out. And she goes running off into the woods, leading the entire town to get together to go after them. Link even tries calling Epona back with the whistle grass, playing Epona's song, and she doesn't listen. She's just gone. And no one in town knows the horrors that are coming for them. As Link goes into the woods running to see if he can find them, screaming their names, in the bush he sees the golden wolf again, staring at him. And Link does one thing that we really don't see him do often. He runs. He leaves the woods, bumping into Russell, before deciding to go back into the woods with Russell, crying beforehand that it's all his fault again. As the town looks for the kids, they wonder if they've angered the spirits, if any of them have committed a taboo. Talos' father does look visibly shaken by this because he knows he's dumped the pumpkins, the rotted, misshapen pumpkins into the ravine. But some of the townspeople wonder it's because they've braced a stranger with pointed ears, which does shake Link. He is to the point he walks off on his own to keep searching. Russell chases after him, concerned for his friend, and tells him Link is just going over it. It's his fault. He thinks they're gone, and it's all his fault. Which leads Russell to shout to him that it's not his fault. Like, you're a friend, blah, blah, blah. Which leads Link just to respond with, I destroyed my homeland. Yeah, so Link... This Link had his past, before he came to the village, he made a mistake. One mistake that led to his entire country to be swallowed by darkness. Which is one of the, again, as I've mentioned, one of this Link's biggest differences from the game is his backstory and the impact it has on him going forward. From what I've seen in a lot of the other Zelda manga, this is not a thing for a lot of them. A lot of the other Links are picking up right where their stories start. They don't really have a backstory to them. Minish Cap, most of his backstory is the fact that he has a connection to Princess Zelda. Oracle of Ages and Seasons, it's the training he received. Phantom Hourglass was more of a connection to more still just a sequel to Wind Waker, so that's its own can of worms. And Ocarina of Time, it's the start of his journey, and Majora's Mask, by extension, is still an extension of Ocarina. But this Link, he has a history all of his own. The fact that he destroyed his home, and he has never told anyone he's finally being crushed by the weight of lying to everyone in town. And as he says this, Russell just looks at him and just says that this is his home. Which is something that Link honestly needed to hear. And we get our first glance at Link's backstory in this new timeline. Well, this new story. He talks about his hometown, which was close to a desert city that guarded the border. Which, knowing what we know as this is the same timeline as Ocarina of Time, could have been made to keep an eye out for the king of the desert. Or it could be that the royal family was worried about something else in the desert. We see Link training, and we also see as he's training with his friends. And yes, Link has named friends here. And he's training with Darpa in swordplay. And Darpa is mentioning the fact that that he will beat Link, even though it's hard to fight Link because Link is left-handed. We actually mentioned this on stream, the fact that Link, up until Skyward Sword, if I'm correct, was almost always left-handed. And Darpa mentions a secret sword in their village. The Garuf sword. No one has been able to... They were told never to go near it, and no one's able to pull out the sword. All of them take a shot at trying to pull out. In particular, Darpa really tries. He's like, you know what? Link, you give it a try. And as he does, the Triforce of Courage glowing beforehand, he pulls out the blade, and we get some stunning artwork. Like, my picture does not do it justice, but we get some stunning artwork of, as he pulls out the sword, the stone sucks in everyone around it. All of his friends, Zoo, Roma, Darpa, it pulls them all in. And as Link is about to fall in, he feels something grab his hand, and he gets face to face with death. Which is the face of the hero's shade. And this is the trauma Link has been dealing with. First off, I gotta say, imagery of the hero's shade here, like just the actual visual of it, is horrifying to look at. The actual detail around the helmet, the skull, the cold eyes, and the fear on Link's face, which is not really something we often associate with Link, as Link is the hero of courage. So seeing him be afraid, I honestly think makes this Link more relatable. Then he's just like, tough and ready to face every challenge. He's got real fears, real trauma. And when he wakes up, he was alone in the desert, and from there he came to the village. But they can't wait for too long, as Fado comes out severely injured because the bokoblins have started to attack. Russell goes to treat his wounds, and he hands Link his sword, telling him to go help. This establishes the fact that Link is a master swordsman. Not a master swordsman, but he's trained, not by Russell, but he was trained to defend the border from the monsters that lie beyond, in particular, the forces of Ganondorf. Or at least something else, which I will get to when we get to one of the later volumes. From here, things play out relatively the same, with Ilya getting hit by some arrows before being knocked unconscious, and Colin being grabbed and tied up by the king. But actually, kind of. So they take the scene from Kekiro Village where we see Colin tied up, and they put it right here. Actually, I'm trying to remember when we see Colin tied up. Do we? Yeah, no, we see Colin tied up, but they put it right here. And Link goes toe-to-toe with, or tries to fight the king, and it does not work out for him. And we see just they depict him as like a grotesque monster. Talk about the fact that he values strength, that Ilya is pretty, he's going to take her with him, and just like everyone else, before getting stabbed in the back by Link. And Link decides he's going to try to do something, a fancy sword trick, by cutting off his arm. And the blade could not pierce the bone. And it couldn't even pierce much of the muscle. But King decided, you said you were going to take my arm. Well, he decided to take Link's. He cuts off Link's arm, and for all lack of other words, kills Link. He leaves Link face down in the lake, missing an arm, bleeding out, proclaiming that the paradise of the Twilight realm of fear and hate with darkness is beginning. And also does just shove Link's head under the water until he stops moving. The bokoblins and everyone else declaring Link dead, leaving him. Before as they leave, after they leave though, the Triforce of Courage does light up again, and his arm rises out of the fucking water, holding the sword, before the spirit of Odin reattaches Link's arm, leaving him very confused because he thought he was just killed, but he doesn't care at this point. He goes running after Ilya, Colin, back to Farron Woods, determined to try to save everyone before coming face to face with the Veil of Twilight. From here on out, the game and manga pretty much play out the same exact way. The hand of the Shadow Beast jumps out, grabs Link, pulls him through, turns him into a wolf, and he is dragged away to Hyrule Castle. As these events are happening, he is being watched by an imp. And that brings us to the end of the first volume of The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. There's a lot done differently. some of which that I really like. First off, I like giving Link a backstory and this trauma related to the destroyed country. I also really like the reasoning for the kids going missing because of the fact that it feels a little bit less contrived. I mentioned it towards the end of the stream. I kind of have a problem believing that King Bubblen took all of the kids. I could see Colin and Ilya because they were with Epona when Link was beat up. But I like the idea of Epona running into the woods with the other kids. This also is going to come up later. But like, Epona does some crazy shit. The wolf is prominent and also has a connection to Midna. And just the realm of Twilight as a whole. There's also the lore implications about the desert, about the city on the desert border that is there to watch for evil, being connected to the desert in Legend of Zelda, especially because of the fact this is a sequel to Ocarina of Time, is just always bad because of the fact that's where Ganondorf came from. That desert is filled with a lot of evil shit. I also really do like the idea of Link learning, because I mentioned it during the stream. This Link doesn't get magic. He gets magic items, but never magic. Like, the Gao Boomerang is enchanted, and he gets a couple other magic items throughout the adventure, but nothing is ever using... He's never using innate magic, like, say, Ocarina, or, Link to the Past, where they use magic to feel various abilities. This Link is much more physical, and basically this Link is a martial class who wants to learn magic. This Link actually, I think, learns even less magic than the Link in... gets even less magic items, if I remember correctly, than the Link in the game. But we'll talk about that with the later volumes. I, again, do highly encourage to go read the actual collection. The team of Akira Himikawa, and I say team because it is an artist and writer team, do fantastic work. So far, I've enjoyed all of their Zelda manga that I've read. Twilight Princess in particular has been the one I enjoy the most, but it also might just be due to my personal love for Twilight Princess. And I look forward to talk about the other volumes because this story is only going to get crazier. I have seen some people say that like they should have just skipped the first chapter because of the fact a lot of people, I mentioned during the stream for Twilight Princess as a game, a lot of people do not like the opening for Twilight Princess as they feel it's very slow and dull, and some people said that with this. I prefer this more than the game because of the fact that it shows Link trying to run from something, trying to throw himself into this like happy-go-lucky, I'm enjoying my time in the village deal, when he's got some serious fucking demons. I mean, he destroyed a country. And we are going to see the repercussions for that as we go. But for now, though, it's where we're going to stop talking about the manga for now. I will see you all next week for Volume 2.